From Pope Francis. One time, I heard a father say, "At times I have to hit my children a bit, but never in the face so as not to humiliate them," he said. "That's great," Francis continued. He had a sense of dignity. He should punish, do the right thing, and then move on. No, this is abuse. Stop hitting kids. Under every other context, physical violence, yes, violence, to control the behavior of someone else is illegal, and for good reason. Stop hitting kids in the name of discipline. If you love your kids, you will find another way to teach them right from wrong. If you disagree, then call us, because the show is starting now. Hello and welcome to another episode of Truth Wanted. I'm your host, Jon the Skeptik. This is the live call-in show that happens every single week, Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Time, where we talk to people about what they believe and why. And if you'd like to call us, you can at 1-512-991-9242 or through your computer at tiny.cc/calltw. Truth Wanted is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. We'd also like to welcome our new viewers watching today on Twitter and Twitch, and give some love to all our viewers on YouTube. With me today, this fella does not need an introduction. He's very well known, Jim Barrows. How are you, Jim?
Not too bad. How you doing, John?
I'm great. It's great to be here. You've been a big inspiration to me. I just wanted to get that out there in front of everyone. So, but before we do get started, we want to give you last week's results of the We Want the Truth, or the WWTT segment. So last week, we asked you, what is something that is overpriced, but people pay for it anyway? And here are some of our favorite answers. At number 3, Elizabeth Black. Something that's overpriced and people pay for it anyway, palm readings. Free palm readings. That's true. Number 2.
It costs you time.
It does. And I still don't know which one the Lifeline is, and I don't know. I'll work it out at some point. And number 2, Blake Walker. Tithing is overpriced, but people pay for it anyway. Nice one, Blake. Yeah. And the number 1 answer, Brain Dead. Private jets are overpriced, but megapastors flocks pay for them anyway. That, new cars, they need new houses. They've got a lot of stuff that needs paying for.
Oh, yeah. Without a doubt. Absolutely ridiculous.
This week's question is, so you need to complete this sentence. Reiki never works on me, probably because Jim, you were given this prompt. That's it? Because I don't believe in it.
Yeah, I mean, spiritual energy and all the rest of that is just, I went down the rabbit hole of looking into it because I realized I didn't really know that much about it. And I really do think it comes down to belief. I did find they have some research papers in a peer-reviewed journal, but it's alternative medicine journal and a holistic nursing journal. So peer-reviewed by people who may not have the most objective viewpoint towards it.
Right.
But there's also behind paywall, so I wasn't able to actually look at the research. But I may actually decide to pay for that and cough up to $50 and go do that.
Do you even need to? I feel like you can just like rub your hands together and wave them over the screen and draw the information that way, because that's how it works, right?
Yeah, basically that's how it works. Yeah, I mean, it's just waving your hands over people. And the only education you need to do it is to be tuned, and go through an attunement, whatever that means. So, again, how do you know it even works? I'd like to really look at the research and see what they did, and run it by, say, Dr. Ben or any of our other science-related folks, and get them to look at it and go, what's wrong procedurally with this? Is there anything wrong with it procedurally? And then see if they actually do a good job of isolating all their variables to go, yes, it was Reiki that did it and not anything else. Because that's the problem with a lot of these, right? The Templeton Foundation study on prayer isolated it down to prayer and proved that, that it didn't prayer doesn't work. So let's see if they isolated their variables down and isolated it down to just Reiki, and does that actually work, and what the actual results were. So, you know.
Well, I was actually taught this, and I didn't tell you this pre-show. I was actually taught at school how to use my Reiki powers, because I grew up as a spiritualist, and part of that is using Reiki, and I remember my art teacher in high school was showing me how to like build an energy ball. And I genuinely believed that I was making this ball of energy in my hands, because she was telling me that I could feel it. So I was going, well, yeah, of course I can feel it, because I've got this power. Right. And I spent ages like building this big ball of energy that wasn't even there.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you externally, I mean, you could even convince yourself you see it, right? We can convince ourselves a lot of crazy stuff. Right. So how do you get beyond your senses and prove that objectively that there is some sort of energy that's there? And if you can't actually measure it, then does it really exist? Yeah, it's
that's a long answer, Jim. And there's only a certain amount of characters you can put on YouTube comments.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that will come up next week. My answer would have been, and it's a lot smaller, Reiki doesn't work on me, probably because I'm filled with the wrong spirit, namely whiskey.
Yeah,
that could have worked.
Well, whiskey does have some medicinal qualities.
Oh, here we go. That's true. Well, so do leave your comments for the prompt this week. Again, it's Reiki never works on me, probably because and I can't wait to see whoever's on next week, cannot wait to see what you all come up with. So comment on the video, and your comment may well be read out on next week's episode. I feel like you are very well known in the ACA. So I like this. There's usually a section on the start of the show where you go, talk about what you're up to, Jim. What are you up to? But I'm sure everybody knows, because you're here. You're always here.
Well, I haven't been here in a little while, but I'm up to about 5'11".
Okay,
probably a little shorter. Depending on later in the day, it gets shorter.
That's that gravity for you.
Yeah, exactly. No, I've actually been looking around at starting my own channel and doing book reviews, and probably going to start with I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist, Frank Turk's shtick.
That's a good one to start out with.
Yeah, because he's so well known, and quite frankly, if you've seen his show, now he doesn't call it a show, but let's face it, that's really what it is. You probably have seen the book. Now, I will say I'm only about halfway through it, and I have to give them props for some good science. That they do explain the Big Bang very well, and they give you a mnemonic for proving that the Big Bang actually exists. And so props to them for that. But then they go off on this tangent, and it's like, wait a minute. You guys really know what's there? And they make the typical, they talk about themselves being theists, like their type of theism is the only one, and they forget that there are, the pagans are out there. And so the pagans don't believe anywhere near close to what they do. Right. Just all kinds of this kind of stuff. And it's just, it is a pain in the neck. So it'll be probably a couple of episodes, I hope. We'll see how that goes. So be on the lookout for that. I do have a YouTube channel. There's nothing on it, but I do have one.
Well, hurry up. Come on. The people are waiting, Jim.
Yeah, exactly. So
I think you go ahead.
As I said, I hope people are interested in it, and also nobody is doing this stuff. And I know that as atheists, we get thrown these books quite a bit. And if you're not a big reader like me, and you do like watching YouTube, then maybe it'll be a resource for people to use. And so, and throw some stuff back at people for some of this stuff. So.
That's a good idea. And there's what I don't see a lot of on the internet is not people who don't have a background in a certain religion looking at those religions. So like, reading the Hindu texts, for instance, as not even slightly related to Hinduism, and like our reaction to that would be quite a cool thing as well.
Yeah. That would be kind of interesting is to read some of that. Of course, everybody immediately expect me to read Kama Sutra.
I mean, who hasn't read that, right?
I hope everybody's read it,
Yeah, right.
it's much more specific about how to love people than say the Bible.
Right. There's no owning of people. Well, it depends on which page you read on the in the Karma Sutra.
Yeah, and also depends on the definition of own, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Not my kink, but
that's what this show should be about. Let's do some maybe not. That's a different show. That's
that's a different show. And people want to see that. If people want to see secular sexuality, come back. TV at atheistcommunity.org.
There you go. You can tell that he's been on here before.
Yeah.
have you done Truth Wanted before?
Yeah. It's been a while. It's not one. Yeah. Not one of the more. Dan's always had people on, and then I just haven't gotten in with the new crew rotation for the show. So but it's still fun. Hopefully we get some good calls.
And that was the question. Ghosts. Yeah. Right. And I was saying to you pre-show that where I am in the US, the people here are so desperate for me to believe in ghosts.
Yeah.
Almost every week they're saying, I had this happen to me today. I had this happen to me today. Can you tell me that I didn't, or can you disprove it? I'm like, well, I wasn't there to experience it. I don't know exactly what you experienced. So how would I be able to disprove or convince you that it wasn't what you did experience?
And you could experience the same thing, sounds, wind, whatever, and not put the exact same interpretation on it, because you're not going to jump to the supernatural until you've got good evidence to do so. Whereas they're going to take that as evidence, and it really is just evidence that, the wind blew. Right. Just because you don't know why doesn't necessarily mean anything. So
one of the things it's so sad for me, because I teach a lot of kids because I work in a theater. So there are kids coming through, and the kids will tell me about the stories of the ghosts that are in the building. And they'll say, have you seen, there's one called Loretta is what she goes by. And a kid who's like 7 or 8 years old. Have you seen Loretta? I've seen Loretta. And I just feel so bad that this kid's parents have told her that this is what you've experienced. If she's experiencing things, they might need to, help her out with some things, because she might be undergoing some stress or, when I was younger, believed I could hear voices and see things. And I now realize that I had a fairly stressful childhood, and that's probably what was going on. My brain was filling these gaps with explaining things with ghosts and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. You got to have an explanation for it, and you can't jump to conclusions. You got to start with the evidence and work up from there. Okay, you heard something. So what? Things creak.
Right.
You felt a puff of wind. Well, okay, what does that really mean? Right. Air moves as it heats and cools. And air doesn't heat and cool at the same rate in the same places. It just depends on what's radiating heat or absorbing heat. It's just come on, people.
It's frustrating. Was there ever a time in your life when you did believe that you were experiencing these things?
No, that's kind of the weird thing. I mean, I'm a former Catholic, a recovering Catholic, but I never had a supernatural experience. Now I say that in when I was in the Army, we were still going through training, working on radars, and we're learning how to fix the radar. And a friend of mine, we were doing a final test, and as we're walking up, a friend of mine says something in vaguely Latin-esque, waves his hand, and we both laugh. We go and turn the radar on, and the radar starts to rotate backward, groaning and shaking. Not supposed to do that, and it's not, as far as we could tell, it should never rotate in reverse, but it did, and we all saw it, and we immediately shut it down because it was shaking way too much to let it go, and we never did figure out a reason for it. Now, did my friend stumble upon a spell to do as he said he was going to do, infest it with a demon? I don't know. He never was able to recreate it, though. Right? We couldn't do it a second time, partly because he couldn't remember the words he said. That's how nonsensical they were. Right. But just because we didn't find a cause for it doesn't necessarily mean anything. Electricity, we understand it pretty well, but it's still some, weird things still do happen. We had a radar that everything on it was just completely noisy. It wouldn't work. And when I say noise, it's electronic noise. Receiving the radar signal back was just really, really noisy. And it came back to the shop 3 or 4 times. It come back to the shop. We couldn't find it. It didn't do it anymore. They took it back out. It did it again, brought it back. And finally, one of our chief warrants went out to site with us, cut the ground line, and then stuck it back in, and it stopped. Because Earth is also ground, but it's also an infinite resistance, and will reflect back if the length of your ground wire is the right length for your wave. And so it'll bounce it back 180 degrees out of phase. And that's what we were seeing, was this coming back 180 degrees out of phase and causing all these problems. And that's all we had to do. So sometimes electricity is weird and doesn't do things you expect, because there's things you don't think about. We all think of ground. Electricity goes to ground. That's how we think of it. But not always. There are circumstances where it doesn't. So it was a little weird. But stuff like that happens all the time, right? Stuff we forget about, don't know. There's a section on the radar called a magic T, because at the time they didn't have the math to explain it. I think they've now figured out why it works, but they just knew it did. It's a waveguide, stuff like that. It's just, yeah, come on, guys. There's always an explanation. Sometimes the explanation is I don't know.
Right.
And sometimes weird things happen that you don't really expect. We get weird readings on the radar all the time, and that was dust and other things collecting on the wires, creating circuit paths. The word bug we use for defective software comes from the fact there's an actual bug found in hardware. Back in the day, it was a real live bug found in hardware is what the note was, why the computer at the time failed. So this kind of stuff happens, and if the bug is still alive and walks away, now you have something that you don't understand. Was that magic? No, that was just something happening out of sight that when you went to go figure out what had happened, it wasn't there anymore. And that happens too. Just weird stuff happens all the time. So
what I'm getting from this, Jim, is ghosts or electricity.
Could be.
I'm just making that up. It might not be.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. What are they, right?
Yeah, right.
If you could detect them with electronic equipment, then they have to have an impact on the electrical field,
right?
Which means they have to be, iron, magnets, electricity. Yeah. They have to do something along those lines. So if you've got a ghost meter out or an e-meter out, that's now you've got something that's electrical. Now you should be able to figure out what it is. You should be able to track that signal to a source. And what do you need to generate an electronic signal? 2 different metals scratching over each other.
Right.
Anytime you create a spark with 2 metals, it's not always. They could just be getting it hot enough to do that. But just come on. If it's going to be electricity, it's going to be electricity, and we can detect that.
Right.
We can't,
the supernatural still hasn't been detected.
Yes.
I'm sure there'll be a massive news story one day when they go, do you know what? We've done it. We finally detected the supernatural. So get ready, folks. We're about to prove God. We're about to prove demons and ghosts and all this stuff. Until then, let's just assume that there's a naturalistic, or just say, I don't know.
Yeah. And over the last 2,000 years, every supernatural phenomena has been proven to have natural causes.
There you go.
Storms, disease, drought, too much rain, too little rain, tornadoes, hurricanes, all these natural phenomena, earthquakes were thought to be caused by gods, by demons, by witches, and every single one of them has a natural cause now. If we're going to steelman it, there are 2 that don't, and that is near-death experiences and the shroud. If we're going to steelman their positions, right? That's all you got.
Yeah. Yeah.
2 heavily contested phenomena. What are the odds that those are going to eventually be right? Just because everything else is.
And so if, and I'm not asking you directly, this is more rhetorical, but people are going, oh, I had a near-death experience, or a friend of mine had a near-death experience. So that proves that there's something. I had a friend who actually did die and didn't have a near-death experience. He came back after being dead for, I think it was 7 or 11 minutes. It's one of those 2. And he didn't have an NDE. So does that mean it doesn't exist because, he didn't experience it? So which way do we go? Which way do we go with that?
Right. Yeah. And every NDE report that I've read so far has simply been a reporting of the facts. There's been no investigation as to how these things happened. And so there's no attempt to even do that, right? How do you even begin to create an experiment to do this?
Right.
If it actually happens, you should be able to create the experiment without risking life and limb if it's a real phenomenon. If the only way to get there is to actually nearly die or die and come back or some version of that, does that really mean anything at that point? My girlfriend's a ICU nurse, and death is hard to figure out sometimes. Even with the best of equipment, just because the equipment doesn't detect brain signal doesn't necessarily mean there isn't one, because it's neurochemical. There still could be chemical processes that we don't understand yet. But also sometimes the equipment is faulty and sometimes it's old and not maintained well, because we in this country have decided that profiting off of human misery is a good thing.
Right.
Sorry, we're getting too close to politics.
Yeah, stop, quick. Just in case, Jim. Well, let's move on with the show, because it's early days. We do have a lot of space for calls, but we do have some calls waiting for us. But before we get to any calls, we have to say a big thank you to the patron of the week. Every single week, we get to shout out a patron that donates through tiny.cc/patrontw. Just for supporting the show, which is very kind of you. This week's patron of the week is Daniel Thanks, crew, for picking at someone I can't say. Vlahovic. There you go. Thank you so much there, Daniel. And a big thank you to everyone else who contributes to the show. Okay, Jim, are you ready?
Yes.
We do have some calls waiting.
Awesome.
Let's have a look. Do we? No, we don't quite. They're just having a little conversation right now. We don't quite have someone there. So let's talk a bit more. And by the way, there is still a lot of space for calls, but we've got some almost ready to come on.
Yeah, please call in, folks.
And it doesn't even have to be about cryptozoology or ghosts. It can be about whatever you want to talk about. We're here. We're here to learn some stuff. The whole thing is truth wanted. We want some truth. Whether that's gods or ghosts or smacking babies, which I don't agree with. Anyway.
Yeah, actually, with our conversation, I completely forgot about that. Our stinger intro there. And oh my God, the only reason the Pope thinks that this is okay is because it says so in the Bible.
Right.
There is absolutely no evidence that it's as effective as they want it to be, and there's a ton of evidence that the side effects and unintended consequences are horrifying.
Right.
And I know in my own personal experience as a kid, I wasn't always the best of kids. I occasionally got into trouble, and yes, my parents believed in physical discipline, and yes, I was spanked. And I can honestly say that there's a lot of things that I don't tell my parents just out of fear. And that's not a good thing.
Even now?
Yeah.
Wow.
Just very, very long-term effects of, I'm not going to tell them that because it's not worth the trouble and the pain. And so, that's a negative effect. As a kid, I went to more effort to hide things than I would have otherwise, and that kind of thing. I think the research is pretty clear. Don't do it. It's bad for kids.
Right.
So
I think that's a cultural thing as well, because I also misbehaved as a child, but my family are largely non-believers. And occasionally I would get a smack, as we call it, a smack across the backside. I even once had a slipper thrown at me because I'd done something I probably shouldn't have, but I don't think I deserved an item being thrown at me. And I'm also fairly ashamed to say, and this is before I became a parent, that because I didn't really have a stake in the game, I guess.
Right.
I was like, well, yeah, people hit kids because they need to misbehave. Now that I'm a parent, if anybody hit my children, including me or my wife, I would lose it. There's
exactly
so many better ways of disciplining. And my wife, she is not a physical person. She would never, ever
Right.
And I've learned a lot from her about, you know, how to discipline a child with, you can just use words.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Just use words.
Words
and teach them, don't gaslight kids into behaving well. There are things you can say that will help them learn how to, you know, make the right choices in the future.
Right. Exactly. You don't need to beat your kids.
No.
You don't need to use shame. I mean, any of the tools that religious folks use are generally bad.
Mm-hmm.
Shame being particularly harmful. And fear. No, why do you have to use those tactics? If your God actually created humans, he'd understand that, and he'd abandon it. That he doesn't understand that, and he uses these techniques that, you know, they are very traditional, and they do work. They just have really, really bad side effects and consequences to it.
Right.
And they're unintended, you know. So if he knew that, then he'd abandon it. And he did not ban it. He didn't make a prohibition against it. He said, go ahead and do it, and here's how you do it. Just like he did with slavery and so many other things. That means that God does not understand human psychology.
Right.
If he doesn't understand our psychology, one, how is he omniscient? Two, did he really create us?
Yeah. Would he have created something that he couldn't understand?
Yeah.
I guess
exactly.
maybe humans have done that. Maybe humans have created something they can't understand.
Well, there's a technology joke that runs something along the lines of nobody understands and Windows. Oh shoot, you'd have to be technical to understand it. Anyway, it's about Linux and Windows, and you know, Linux. People understand Linux because it's simple. Nobody understands Windows because it's complex.
Right? Are you saying that I wouldn't understand it, Jim, because I'm not technical? Maybe.
No, it means I'd have to explain too much, and I actually have to go back and find the actual joke.
Don't. Just it's fine.
Yeah. If you don't know who Linus Torvalds is and the whole thing between Linux and Windows, then you probably I don't want to explain it all. We don't have time. We've
got calls waiting. We've got calls waiting. We need to speak to.
Well, let's take them.
Let's do them. Let's do them. We have Bob in the queue. Him from Germany. He says that ghosts do not exist, even though he's had a close encounter. Hello, Bob. You're on with Jon and Jim.
Hello, Jon. Hello, Jim. Glad to be on your show. Hello.
So you've had a close encounter with what you're saying is a ghost, but you don't believe in them. Is that correct?
Actually, I had an encounter, yes, when I was a kid. And me and my family, we were watching a movie. And the movie was called Insidious. I'm sure you know this. And it's a hella scary movie. And I was scared because I was 11 years old when I saw it. I shouldn't have seen it. And after that, I couldn't sleep. I thought I was seeing ghosts everywhere. And I was afraid, but I don't see how ghosts are real, and why do we debate if I don't believe them, but I'm afraid that they exist because I don't know if they exist. You know,
Bob, I feel like we could almost be the same person. I spent a large chunk of my childhood being absolutely terrified of spirits and ghosts because my family taught me that was the truth. And is that something that's big? I mean, we're European brothers. I'm going to guess that your family have some kind of spiritual belief, and they probably taught you that you know there are these things that are around us.
Yes, they actually did. Before the movie started, they wanted to scare me, so they told me like, care because ghosts exist. And when the movie ended, you know, I was going to go and sleep, and they scared me so I have this trauma also.
Right.
I don't know. Yeah.
Kids are impressionable, right? We all know this is why we do all of our learning at such an early age. We go to school and everything because that's when the information sucks into our brains. They're most ready to absorb all the information. And so if your folks and your family are going to be telling you that, you know, these things are real, of course you're going to go, well, I trust these people. They wouldn't lie to me. So, okay, they're real. And then we just go down this route maybe of our imaginations taking over. Like I said, I spent a large chunk of my childhood believing that I could hear voices of children playing outside at like 1 o'clock in the morning. I believe there was a young girl that would walk along the stairway in one of my houses when I was a child growing up in England. And every time I would explain it to my parents, they would say, well, that's obviously a ghost because this is real. And rather than them questioning it and teaching me to question it, I then had it ingrained in me that ghosts are a real thing, and it absolutely terrified me. Yeah. So I am with you, Bob.
Yeah. What a story, John. Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to share that. Have you got anything to add, Jim?
Well, this is kind of the thing too, is we can't blame our parents too much because they're teaching us things they think are true. Right. And they're doing it to help us to understand the world and to get a handle on what the world is. And that's the problem, right? They haven't been taught, what we don't teach on a regular basis is critical thinking and how to go about actually thinking about the world. And that's something that I think, shows like this, and we need to, and every other show on YouTube that deals with skeptical thinking helps with. But I think we need to get it in our schools. We need to actually teach critical thinking.
Right. So
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I say something here?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
We say that if ghosts exist, it's like something supernatural, and we use the word supernatural often. I don't understand why we use this word, because we live in a natural world, and everything that happens in it must be natural, and is explained by science.
Right.
So when we say something is supernatural, how can a supernatural take place in the natural world? It's supernatural, so it can't happen. It can't possibly happen. That's my point.
That's the real question.
Right.
That's the question that people who claim the supernatural exists have to come up with is if something doesn't exist in the natural world, how are they interacting with it? Right? There has to be some natural mechanism to interact with the natural world. And so what is that mechanism? If we can't detect the ghost, then we can only detect how they interact with it. We can then detect the ghost, right? If if the ghost actually has real works through electronics or electrical fields, we can detect electrical fields. We know how to actually do that. So where's that evidence, right, of them doing that? If they can move objects by, say, changing gravity, we can detect gravity waves. We can detect that. So where's that evidence? How is this happening? We should be able to detect however the supernatural is interacting with the natural, and that even fails consistently. I mean, Johnny Carson famously did it on the Tonight Show on a regular basis, semi-regular basis. He debunked a number on his show. He had these supernatural folks come in. Uri Geller, yeah, came on the show, and he embarrassed Uri right on the show. And that whole demonstration, he did that on a regular basis and showed people how the mind reading trick was and the reading envelope trick worked. All in great comedy. But he's just one of dozens of people who are out there doing it on a regular basis. You've got Penn and Teller and Randy. I'm getting old. Randy's foundation. The magician.
Oh, the guy. Yeah, I know who you mean. Who passed away recently.
Yeah.
A few years ago.
Yeah. He had that $1 million prize for anybody who could prove that the supernatural existed, and nobody was able to do it.
Right.
So, yeah.
So, Bob, what would, if we were to just go back to when you were 11 years old, what would you, do you feel like you would have more of a natural explanation for it now? Or do you still feel like it was definitely a ghost?
No, I wouldn't say I feel like it was a ghost. I'd say this, that I was scared because I saw this movie when I was so young, and my parents also scared me after the movie ended. So you know what I'm saying? It's like, why would they scare me? It's like I have this trauma in me. And that's why I fear. That's why I fear this.
I get you, man.
Now,
I spent a lot of my childhood as well. Like I would cover my face over with the duvet, and I'd just make this little mouth hole that I could breathe, just so that I couldn't see anything in the night.
Oh, me too.
Man.
Me too.
Yeah, there you go. I feel like we're brothers, Bob.
Oh,
I absolutely feel like we're brothers. Yeah, yeah. And now
I feel like I'm missing out on an experience.
You are, Jim. I'll convince you at some point that these things are real, and then you'll go to bed tonight and put this duvet over your head. Yeah, I completely get it. But let me tell you, Bob, I'm now 40 years old, and I sleep soundly at night with no duvet over my head because I've finally, like you said, finally got to the point where I don't believe in this stuff anymore, and I've the supernatural hasn't ever been demonstrated. So like if it interacts with the natural world, then it's got to be natural. So then we'd be able to prove it, and it's never been proven. So I don't know. I'm just going to say I had some experiences when I was a young child. I was stressed, and now fortunately I sleep very well at night with no lights on as a 40-year-old.
Definitely agree. Yeah.
So there's hope for you yet, Bob. That's what I'm saying. You'll be fine. That bedspread. Sorry, I had to translate it because I'm a British person. Duvet, bedspread, sheet, whatever. Yeah, it'll come down, and you'll be fine. Maybe.
Maybe.
Well, we appreciate you calling in there, Bob. Thank you so much for sharing that. Hope that
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
You have some sound sleep for the next few nights, thinking that maybe it's not real.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Take care.
Thank you.
That was cool. That was a cool call. I love the calls about the ghosts because I feel like I learn a little bit about it. Before we get on to another call, just so you're aware, we're now accepting super chats, and we will read them live on air. So feel free to make us read the things that you've written, like the words that I can't pronounce, assuming that they're obviously YouTube appropriate. If you'd like to support the show, you can do so by donating to our Patreon at tiny.cc/patrontw. There's a couple of different tiers on there, so you can get your name shouted out during the show if you donate. And you can also support the show by becoming a member. You get emojis in the chat. Your name gets highlighted in the chat, and you will be immune to my least favorite thing, slow mode, all for as little as 99 cents per month. And there's some cool wait, is that my face on one of the emojis? Yes, I've made it to the emojis.
Awesome.
Thank goodness. I've been whinging about that for months. I'm going to have my face ready like my emoji when it returns to my face. But yeah, so feel free to donate, and we will say silly things if you make us. There you go. That's what my emoji looks like. Just in case.
Yeah.
We've got another call in the list. So you ready to take this one, Jim?
Absolutely.
We've got the Prestige. He, him in Pennsylvania would like to talk about their experiences with UFOs. Man, I would love it if aliens were visiting here. So what have you got for us, the Prestige?
Well, this goes back. Hi, Jim. Listen to you all the time. And Jon, I think you did the skeptic thing, right?
That's right. Yeah. I try to.
Yeah, I know. I see you too. I watch your YouTube as well. Okay, I'll be really quick. I don't want to take up too much time.
You can take as much time as you want. Come on.
Okay, very good. Well, this goes back to the late 60s, and I was a wee little lad.
Right.
I'm older now, obviously. Now, this is about, I guess I was about 7 years old, and I was sleeping. My brother slept, we had twin beds, and my brother was in one, and I was another. And in the middle of the night, he wakes me up, and he's kneeling, and there's at the foot of our beds are windows. And I had my separate window, and he had his. He was kneeling at the top of his bed on the mattress, looking out the window with his elbows on the sill. It was very Spielberg-esque. And he was looking out the window, and he called me over and said, "Jon, look at this." And it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. And he woke up before me. I don't know what woke him up. But he brings me over. I join him in the same position, and we're looking out of our windows into the dark all the way down our street toward the cul-de-sac. And there's this cul-de-sac at the end. Mm-hmm. It is absolutely pitch dark. But at the top of the tree line toward the sky, there were two large iridescent orbs, opalescent in color. and they're with variable, changing light complexions, opalescence. So you can think of pastels in the cool range, and grays. And we were transfixed watching these things for a minute, 2 minutes, and we were not afraid. There was nothing about this that struck fear into us at all. We were just watching them with great, great wonder until we got bored. And then we went back to sleep. Now, 20 years later, actually, I shouldn't say 20 years later, maybe it was 30 years later,
wow.
at a Christmas gathering, before we had sold the family house, maybe one of the last ones, and we're standing in a room, a large cathedral full room and ceilinged room. And I looked at my brother and I said, "Remember the orbs?" And he turned to me with frightening eyes and said, "What was that?" Because we hadn't spoken about it since that time.
Yeah.
And we were both shaking with that. And we said, "What the hell is that?" And then we had to explain to everyone around us what we had witnessed when we were kids.
Right.
Anyway, I met up with my brother this past 2 years, and I said to him, "Listen, there could be any number of explanations for this that we don't know. You know, who knows? I mean, there could be electricity arcing in the transformer above the thing, and maybe it created that effect." And he was going, no, they were definitely aliens. Definitely aliens. We think he's very, very conservative, and I'm very, very liberal. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it. Anyway, that's my story.
I like it. It's a good story. But how so you're sorry, Jim, I'm just going to jump in and then I'll pass to you. But so you don't believe that it was aliens. You're still at the UFO. I can't explain this. It's an unidentified flying object that I have no idea what it is.
Well, I'll put it this way. There are more things in heaven and hell that are dreamt up in my philosophy. I think what we call supernatural might be just the natural order that we don't understand. There are things in matter and energy that we have not penetrated, and so whatever might seem supernatural to us might very well have a very, very natural explanation, and it might not be any of the natural explanations that we would come up with. It would probably take novel, testable predictions to find those things out in time, but they don't occur very often. So how could you really test for something which doesn't occur? Now, if we can recreate it in a laboratory and say, "Look, an orb," we might have something, to work with. So I'm going to stay skeptical and say no. My brother can say, "Well, want to live that fantasy out, he can," but I won't. But that's how that's what I bring to it. Still extremely mysterious. Still, there's no doubt about it. It was a Hollywood effect. It was just amazing.
Right.
And we weren't afraid.
Well, one of the interesting things growing up as an Air Force brat and growing up near Air Force bases, most of it, I grew up around Strategic Air Command, which was B-52s, but which are way too big and ungainly for this to happen at night. But when I was at Dias, my dad was stationed at Dias. The B-1B was being bedded down at the time. And one of the really cool things about that aircraft was it was small enough and well camouflaged enough that night takeoffs, you could really only see the afterburners once you're a certain distance away from it. Or the engines, not the afterburners, but the engines. And they look exactly kind of like you described. And at distance, they didn't look nearly as bright. But as it was taking off and maneuvering, it looks like two glowing aircraft that are doing things that are physically impossible for aircraft to do, except they're on the back of an aircraft doing this stuff, and you're not seeing the whole aircraft, and your brain is just filling in some details for you. And so if you don't see the whole aircraft, I was used to seeing them on their takeoff and landing approaches. And so I knew what they were, but if I didn't know, I could very easily mistake those for unidentified flying objects moving in ways that aren't consistent with what we understand the laws of physics for a ball of light, because that's what they look like. And this is the problem with depending on our eyes for a lot of information is because there's all kinds of effects that can happen, right? If you have a heat, if hotter air in between you, hot air can act as a lens, and things like that. So, you know, it could be a couple different things. It could have been two helicopters working close together on something, you know, with a main light underneath each of them. And from the right angles, that you wouldn't see the helicopter and you wouldn't necessarily hear it if it's far enough away. And with the other thing with the B-1 and F-15s tended to do this as well. If you weren't at the right angle, you might not hear a B-1 go by because the way the acoustics were. It flew right over. I was a lifeguard at the time, and it flew right over the pool as it was making an approach when it first bedded down. And it was a mile or two at least downrange before we heard it. So it was completely silent all the way through until we heard it. And the F-15 didn't do it to the same extent, but there are places in ways that you might not hear a jet engine going if it's far enough away. Add a little bit of lensing effect from the atmosphere, and all of a sudden you've got this really weird thing happening. JAG even did the old TV show JAG. Did an episode where they showed exactly how an F-14 Tomcat going through aerial maneuvers could look like two dancing lights doing things against the laws of physics. But when you sharpen up the image and you can actually see the F-14, you realize exactly what it is. It's just a pair of afterburners doing exactly what the guy described. So it's interesting. It'd be interesting to go ahead.
You know, I was going to say, even phenomena we are familiar with, let's say at ground level, for instance, the Fata Morgana optical effect at sea, where the objects seem as if they're floating on clouds above the horizon line, right? And or if you're familiar with photography, using a long lens which compresses the background into the foreground, we can actually create distortions at ground level. I used to work at Battery in Battery Park, New York, teaching, and I used to go walk to the Battery Park all the time and look at the Statue of Liberty out on the harbor. Now, from the building itself at Battery, through the window, it appeared to be tiny. But as I walked toward it at Battery Park, it became enormous. And it was a complete optical effect. It was an atmospheric effect that it appeared larger. And so these are the tricks that happen in atmosphere. So, I mean, and those are not even flying objects. One, you know, that's at sea and on land, or kind of, So anyway, I just wanted to share that.
I remember watching a show as well, because you were talking about shows there, Jim. There was this thing where a guy wanted to trick some people in a town that there was a flying saucer, an actual alien craft was visiting the town, and he made this thing that was about 6 feet across, and he flew it up with like helium and a fan just to get it, into the sky. And he made a point that because there was nothing around the aircraft to help people guess the perspective, how far or close it was, people were seeing a craft that was, hundreds of meters across, because they looked up and saw this, couldn't hear anything. So their ears were saying, well, it's got to be far away because I can't hear anything, but it's huge because of, how much space it's taking up, and things like that are fascinating. Just wanted to drop that in there.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, Jim, you just said it with all of your experience in aviation. But it's what the atmosphere does. It compresses, it distorts light. It hits our eyes differently at the horizon level as it does as we go look up, straight up. So anyway, I really wish it was the visitation of some sort of
How do you think your brother would react to that explanation?
Well, put it this way: he still supports Donald Trump, so he'll believe anything.
Say no more. We
sorry,
won't be talking about that on this show, but thank you.
I'm terribly sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Thank you so much, Prestige.
Sorry.
That was great.
No,
No, you're good. That was
just a personal opinion.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Thank you so much. That's great. And like, if anybody else is watching or listening and thinking, do you know what, I might have a cool UFO story, then feel free to call in and speak to Jim and I about it. But thanks again, Prestige. It was really kind of you. You have a good one. Take care.
Terrific. Take care.
That was cool.
It would be interesting to go back and find out where he saw it, and then see if there's a military range in the area. And some of those ranges are, start above ground and go up, and some are ground level to a certain level depending on where they are in the Air Force.
And I guess as well,
there's a number.
Oh, you go.
Pardon?
No, you carry on.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see if it might have been a military aircraft, but the fact they only saw it once kind of indicates that it probably wasn't a range that the Air Force uses on a regular basis. But yeah, it's hard to say. Or
maybe they just weren't out at the right time. If they, if it was happening at, and they were kids. What did he say? 7 or 11? I get 7 and 11 mixed up, but
and
maybe they weren't
3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. But it'd still be interesting to do that. And you can check out aeronautical charts, and they have MODs, military operational MOAs, military operational areas marked out on there with the ranges and where they are. And it'd be interesting to see if somebody who's actually seen a UFO, if it would have been in the direction of an MOA at night and things like, stuff like that. I also know a few Air Force pilots, and you couldn't do this in any of the bombers, but the smaller aircraft, like a fighter, you could, if you're doing some low level stuff. I know the Air Force uses our terrain for training. So if you're flying low level off the radar and you see, somebody out driving around at 3 o'clock in the morning through a field, might you chase them if you're an Air Force pilot? You're bored. You're just doing a standard training mission. You might. Black helicopters. I think that's actually the best explanation. Chopper pilot doing a night flight. Keep the certifications up so it's bog standard and not doing anything interesting. And look, this guy is pointing at us and running away from us. Let's go chase him. I know a few pilots with that mentality.
Good on him.
And if you're low level and off radar and nobody's going to know,
why not?
Yeah, pilots play jokes on each other. And they play jokes on people too. So maybe, don't know for sure. Definitely within some of the personalities that some of the people I know could have easily done something like that, and they never admit to it because they get into so much trouble over
right
because
lose
they're
a job.
Not really supposed to do that.
Yeah, man.
So,
I had this week I had 2 temporary UFO experiences. They were temporary because I then realized what they were afterwards. So just very quickly before we take another call, I looked up in the sky when I let my dog out at night, and I saw this red and orange flash, but it was like an elongated flash, and I went, whoa, what's that? And then my wife reminded me that there was a meteor shower over Kentucky, so I was like, okay, that's probably what that was. And I was putting the trash out last night because it was bin day where I live, and looked up and I saw this streak, like a long streak of white dots, and they were all moving. And obviously, for a split second, I went, uh-oh, we're about to die. And then I went, oh no, that's Starlink. Okay, carry on. So there you go. They were my temporary experiences this week. Just thought I'd share.
I forget that Starlink satellites are actually low Earth orbit, so you could see them. Yeah,
it's very bizarre seeing those, and I've seen them a couple of times now. We do have some limited edition T-shirts. And I'm not sure if this is gonna go the right way, but if there is the T-shirt thing, it is the one that I thought it was. I'm not saying it was aliens, but it was aliens. We can get that t-shirt, and that ties in perfectly with the last call. To get yourself that t-shirt, you just have to visit tiny.cc/merchaca. And we've also been telling you about our upcoming annual Bat Cruise on Saturday, August 26th, 2023, for a few weeks now. And we'd like to announce that tickets, have sold out. But there's still a chance you may be able to join us. We have a ticket wait list that you can sign up for, just in case there are any cancellations. To join the wait list, visit tiny.cc/batcruise. For those of you with tickets, you'll be joining the atheist community of Austin for a fun summer evening on the water, conversing with like-minded free thinkers like Forrest Valkai, J. Mike, Christy Powell, and Jim Barrows. And other hosts and crew of our various shows. And if you want to hear our content in audio-only form, please go to tiny.cc/AEN podcasts for all of the latest ACA shows. And I'm going to apologize because I did a visual joke, and I know that there are people listening to this. I put my hands on my face to replicate the emoji that's now used with my face. That's all that was. So I just needed to apologize because I know that some people only listen. And actually, I used to only listen. Now that I'm a host, I watch all of them. But I used to listen when I went running. I'd put on a podcast, and it was an ACA podcast, and I just listened to it whilst I'm running around. There you go. Yeah,
that's always good.
We've got another caller in the line. This is Ultimated JC. Him from Australia. And he says that Christianity proves ghosts. Hello. How you doing? You're on with Jon and Jim.
I'm doing well.
Oh, there we go. How's it going? What have you got for us?
Lag.
That's fine. We can get through
it.
What have you got for us?
My argument for ghosts starts with Judeo-Christianity / Christianity revealingly perfectionating facts, since the Bible is top selling, google.com, and references ghost, biblegateway.com. Agreed?
Right. Well,
so you're saying that the Bible is true because it's popular? I didn't catch that part of it.
Yeah.
I'll read it out again. Judeo-Christianity / Christianity revealingly perfectionates facts, since the Bible is top selling, google.com, and references ghost, biblegateway.com.
So a Christian site is saying that Christianity's true because the Bible's popular. Is that's what we're getting?
Can you say that again?
It sounds like you're saying, and I just want to clarify that we're all on the same page here. It sounds like you're saying that a Christian website says that Christianity's true because the Bible is popular.
Not necessarily. I reference google.com.
And but what, so when you use Google,
absolutely no sense, because you started with something like Christianity / something else, which is part of a URL. URLs have got to start with the domain name before you get to the path. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to give us a path to follow to look up online, it needs to start with the domain name. So it's not apparently not google.com/Christianity, because that's not the way Google works. So I've completely lost your reference and what you're trying to say. So instead of referencing something and making us go look it up, why don't you just present your argument?
Right.
I already have presented the argument. So to me, your reply contradicts a debate for indirectly or directly revealingly presupposing Judeo-Christianity / Christianity. Thus, you would be losing debate points.
I have no idea what you just said.
No, I'm so confused right now.
Because you haven't made an argument yet. The only thing you've done is read something to us. If you're going to make an argument, I would at least hear a couple of premises before we get to a conclusion. And I haven't heard a single premise. The only premise we've come close to hearing is that you seem to think that the Bible is true because it's popular. And that's what we keep asking about. But you keep going back and repeating the same thing that makes absolutely no sense. It is not a logical sentence. You've got no sentence structure. So give us a couple of premises and your conclusion if you're going to make an argument and claim this is a debate. If you're not going to do that, then you're not debating. And oh, by the way, debate points, who gives a shit? So let's get back to, what are your premises? What's your conclusion?
To me, your reply contradicts a debate for indirectly or
Blah,
directly.
blah, 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 blah. We're getting nowhere. We're done.
This isn't a debate program. We just want to hear some truth. I'm just going to mute you just for a second, just in case you want to speak over us. So this, just so you know, this show is called Truth Wanted, and we're looking for the truth. Okay, you come on in and just say this is the truth, because rather than reading out a website and what a website says. You apparently are saying that Christianity proves ghosts. So I'm going to give you one more shot, because I like people. I'm going to give you a chance to just, give us why Christianity proves ghosts, and not like because this website says that the Bible's popular and so that means that ghosts are real. Because if it's because the Bible's popular, I know that Harry Potter is a very, very popular series. And I don't think that because a lot of people read Harry Potter that they're going to get a letter from Hogwarts and become, witches and wizards up somewhere in Scotland. And Voldemort may or may not be real because of Harry Potter.
I'll present the argument again.
Well, you can present the argument, but don't just read the website.
The ghosts are real because Judeo-Christianity / Christianity revealingly perfectionates facts, since the Bible is top-selling, Google.com, and references ghosts, BibleGateway.com.
Okay.
So again, we're back to first premise. I don't get why you say Christianity / Judeo-Christianity or Judeo-Christianity / whatever the order is, completely irrelevant. I have no idea what you mean by that. That's completely irrelevant. That you can Google something on Google.com, great. That means somebody wrote something about it. Doesn't mean it's true. After all, there's a lot of really good fiction out there that Google references. Doesn't mean it's true. So don't care about the reference. Don't care about anything else. You have not given us a premise, right? A simple declarative statement that gives us something to work with. Because it sounds like your first premise is actually the Bible is true because it's popular. The second premise appears to be the Bible says there are ghosts. Conclusion, there are ghosts. Is that your argument?
To me, your reply contradicts a debate for indirectly or directly revealingly presupposed.
I'm just going to mute you there.
It's a yes or no question. Come on.
We're going around.
It's a yes or no question.
Yeah.
Is your argument, premise one, the Bible, you could find the Bible on Google.com. Premise two, the Bible is true because it's popular. Premise three, the Bible says ghosts exist. Conclusion, ghosts exist. Is that your argument? Yes or no? If it's no, then give me your argument as stated in a series of premises.
To me, your question is informally contradictory.
Well, thanks, Ultimated JC. It's very kind of you to call. I appreciate that you gave it a go, but just repeating the same thing over and over isn't going to get us anywhere.
Not responding to anything we say is not going to get you anywhere either.
Exactly. We would like
to frustrating.
Yeah, we would like to learn the truth. That's what the name of the show. So maybe try again another time with something else for us. But let's move on. If you happen to be in Austin on August the 27th, 2023, we will be broadcasting live from the Free Thought Library. So you can join us for Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience. Talk Heathen will be hosted by Forrest Valkai, J. Mike, and Jamie the Blind Limey. And the Atheist Experience will be hosted by Johnny P. Angel, Forrest Valkai, and J. Mike. Doors open at noon, and we hope to see you there.
And I will also be there.
I'll be there all
weekend. So, yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah. That's a month before my baby's due to be born, and I need to decorate a nursery. I would love to be there, but unfortunately I can't.
So even if you can't make it for the back cruise and you just want to come in Austin, Austin's a great little town. Great little foodie town, lots of places, cool places to go and eat. I don't know how much the schedule's been published for Saturday, but Sunday, we'll be there at the Free Thought Library. You'll be able to come in. Let's pack the place. Let's burst some seams because everybody's there, and come on down and have a good time.
Let's rock out like non-believers do.
Yeah, exactly.
Except without me, because I can't go.
We'll be done by 10, but
Yeah. Well, we've all got beds to go to, Jim.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Next up, we've got Stephen. Pronouns are he, him, in Texas. Is disgusted with how aggressively the family is trying to force Christianity and male circumcision on his newborn son. Oh, the caller has previously been Christian. Now that's like just before. Hello, Stephen, by the way. But before we get to you, I had to have a conversation with my wife's midwife about not circumcising my unborn son. I'm interested in what you've got to say, Stephen.
Well, thanks for taking my call. Yeah, it's a boy, and it's just been it's such a trip to be thinking about circumcision for the first time. I was circumcised and went so many years without even thinking about. Are you there?
Yeah, we're here.
Okay, so yeah, I just part of the conversations my wife and I were having once we found out we were having a boy was a circumcision, and we're former evangelicals, deconverted about 8 years ago, both of us, and in the last 5 years, our family has just been getting more and more sort of aggressively evangelical, and we set some good boundaries to the point where they don't really preach to us much. But man, the last few months of my wife's pregnancy, they really kicked it into high gear, and they started sending us books that are just straight out of Sunday school, talking about original sin and God watching you, and just daily calls about. Are you gonna name him after something biblical? Are you gonna baptize him? Make sure that the doctor is Christian. If you use a nanny, make sure they're Christian. Even passively aggressively sort of suggesting that if we don't raise him in Christianity, that we're really setting him up for failure. He was just born 6 days ago. Sorry, it's been a rough week.
Yeah, well, congrats. So you said he's born already?
We talked. He was, he was born about a week ago. He's doing great. And
congratulations.
Thank you. I appreciate it. When my wife and I started talking about circumcision, I hadn't really given it much thought because I just took it for granted that I was circumcised, and in my head everyone was. But I read that a growing number of people are choosing not to, and that the reasons to do it really aren't founded in much.
Right.
And we just basically discovered the best reasons people can give is either, God says to do it, it's the way we've always done it, or there's this myth that it is unsanitary. And my wife's OB cleared that up for us, and she said, look, it takes an extra few seconds to clean in the shower, but it's just about self-care, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
the benefits of having one
really hit
as
me
well.
For the first time that, wow, I would.
Yeah.
What? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, I was just saying, and the benefits of actually having an intact penis as well is, I'm fortunate. I'm from a country where circumcision only happens in medical emergencies. There are occasions when people are born with a restrictive foreskin, and so it needs to be removed. But the majority of people, as far as I'm aware, and I haven't been around looking, but as far as I'm aware, all in the UK have their foreskin. I am one of those people. I was born with my foreskin, and it was never taken away from me. So it's difficult for me because I've always been in the privileged position of not having to ever worry about it until I moved to this country. I now live in the USA, and I'm having my wife is pregnant with a boy, and will be giving birth in a few weeks. And now we also have to have this conversation because my wife is also a non-believer, so she stepped away. But I think because she's been taught about circumcision, there was like a moment where she would go, is this something we do? I know you have yours. How does it work? She's never owned a foreskin, so she's, you know, she had lots of questions. Fortunately, she's been with someone that has an intact penis, and so now knows that it's very easy to keep it clean, and it is, you know, beneficial when it comes to later on in life, and you use it as a sexual pleasure device, that having it is actually a benefit rather than not. So that's me bragging, by the way. I'm sorry. So yeah, it's a difficult one because yeah, man, what would you say, Jim?
You'd better have a damn good reason to mutilate your child.
Yeah, there you go. That'll do it.
You know, that's essentially what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
The only reason it's a thing is because it's in some book people think is holy. That's the only reason to do it, except for the medical stuff that John mentioned. Why are you going to mutilate your child? That makes no sense to me. But it's your kid. Maybe you should wait until he figures out what he wants to do with his penis.
Right.
But I don't know. I mean, I don't have kids. I don't plan on having kids. So I don't have much to say about that part of it, other than why would you want to mutilate your child in the first place?
Right.
Yeah, and it was really eye-opening for me to think about my own body for the first time, and to realize that I didn't have a say in that. You know, right. and if you go online and you look up the little tray they use to circumcise in the hospitals, I mean, they're essentially strapping the little boys down, you know, and they say it's, you know, pain-free and won't traumatize them, but you know, it just seemed to me like there was no benefit to it, and I'm just really disgusted with how easily, you know, my family and also just Christian friends, it's almost automatic that they'll say, "Oh, your little boy's doing well. That's great. Did you circumcise him?" And it's such a personal question to be asking, and I don't understand why they're so obsessed with that piece of it.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things we're not comfortable with being social animals is telling people it's none of their fucking business.
Right.
Get your nose out of my business. And since you're in Texas, these are probably conservatives. And so you can throw that back at them and go, you know what? I can make my own decisions. I'm an independent Texan. So fuck right off and stop doing it. Now you do it that way, and obviously you're probably going to lose your family. But I mean, dealing with family is never easy. I've said it before. I am not out to my family because I don't see any way for that conversation to go well. But I think that if I was in your situation, I would be setting hard boundaries with my finger over the delete your numbers and put you on permanent block for everything until my kid turns 18 and he can make his own decisions.
Right.
And that'd be one threat, and then it'd be done if they crossed it. You know, it sounds like you set some boundaries, but now you're in a situation where, you know, your parents, let's kind of look at it from their point of view, right? Let's put our Christian hats back on for a moment and look at it from their point of view. This is a brand new child who can't make decisions for themselves, and this is why they're pushing so hard all of a sudden. They have nothing but, and under that circumstances, I don't see how parents who will love their grandchild don't stop pushing.
Right.
That's kind of the problem you're up against, right?
Yeah.
And will they feel any differently about their grandson if he still has his foreskin? Will they not love the child if he still has an intact penis?
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I think over time that issue will go, you know, on the back burner. But you know, I guess the overarching theme of the call is just this aggressive push to get inside the mind of a child and affect their bodies in a way, you know, that aligns with their beliefs. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir. I understand that, but I appreciate it.
No, we appreciate it. No,
to vent and hear your thoughts.
That's what we're here for. So, man, I think just keep doing what you're doing, and we're not here to give advice on this sort of thing, but just to like echo, this is our feelings and our thoughts on it. But I mean, I just keep doing what you're doing, and tell them, like Jim says, piss off. This is my kid. This is not your kid. Let's ask him at 21 whether or not he wants to have his foreskin removed. The chances are the kid's going to say no.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And now that he's born, I mean, he's perfect the way he is. He's absolutely
perfect. Of course
perfect.
He is. And just encourage them to read up to the part where God takes the foreskins if they have to read the Bible. And if they don't read it, then they won't think about it. There you go. That's terrible advice. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, I hope let us know.
I really appreciate both of you and what you do.
There's no worries. Come back and let us know how it's going, because maybe eventually they will start going, you know what, actually we don't, how our grandson's penis is doesn't affect the love we have for him. So let us know how it goes.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Stephen. Good luck. I'm in the same boat with my son's penis. So there we go. Thanks. Have a good one. Well, that was a big range of calls, UFOs and circumcision. We've got it all. So you can email truthwanted at truth@atheist-community.org, and you can reach out to the ACA at tv@atheist-community.org and see what's been going on at our website, which is atheist-community.org. There's also a Facebook group, and it's run by the fans for the fans. And to get there, you go to tiny.cc/FBTWG to interact with other fans. And have you ever said to yourself, I really love the content that the ACA creates, but I wish there was a way I could get it all the time? Well, guess what? We have you covered. We now have 2 24/7 live streams. AXP TV delivers a constant stream of shows, clips, and specials from over 26 seasons of the Atheist Experience. And now Heathen TV provides you with clips from Talk Heathen. Watch or simply listen to your favorite hosts and discover some hosts you've never even heard of, like Jim Barrows. You've probably never heard of him before. I'm kidding, obviously. You just go to visit tiny.cc/AXP TV and tiny.cc/Heathen TV to join in the fun. And thanks, Jim, for hanging out with me. Like I said, I'm a big fan of yours. I've watched you for years.
This was fun. We need to do it again soon.
Definitely. And so you said you're going to maybe start a YouTube channel. You're not sure yet.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of working towards it. I need to put a lot more effort into it and start working on it regularly. So yeah. It's hard reading through Turk's books, so
it might take a while.
Yeah, I keep throwing it down. I also got the study guides too, so I'll go through the study guides with it, and then that way I'll know that I've got it all, and then we can talk about it. So
you're really going for it. Well, and also we're definitely going to be going on to the Atheist Community of Discord after show. You can join us there at tiny.cc/ACD Discord. And last but not least, we might have one more call. Let's just give them a second. No, they're being screened. Maybe, do you want to hang around maybe for one more?
Yeah. Let's give it one more call.
Yeah, why not? Because maybe they can give us something about Bigfoot, because that way we've covered absolutely everything today.
I think so. Yeah, Bigfoot would. Well, no, Loch Ness.
That's true. That's true.
Bigfoot is cryptozoology, so is Loch Ness. I give us crypto.
That's fair.
We've talked about ghosts, UFOs, foreskins.
Yeah, that's going to be my favorite. Well, before we do get to that last call, let's say a big thank you to everybody that makes this happen, the crew, because without them, we would just be 2 floating heads, never talking. There they are. What a beautiful bunch of faces. Give it a wave. Well done. Thank you so much for making this happen every single week. You are wonderful folks. And like I say, none of these shows would happen without those wonderful people putting in a lot of work for free. They designate their time. They volunteer their time just to help us look good.
And if you want to know how much work they do, just watch any show that does live call-ins on YouTube.
There you go.
Shannon Q does it herself on occasion, and other folks doing it. It is not an easy job, and we don't have to do anything but click a button to answer the call and then talk to people. And that's because of those folks right there doing all the hard work.
And we love them all for it.
You know, there's one person that we always forget to thank, and that's Justin, who is the guy who answers our email. And that email is sometimes terrifyingly toxic. And he deals with that. He answers all the email. Occasionally, if you want me to answer something, he'll forward it on to me. And he deals with all that, and he definitely needs a huge thank you as well. And we always forget him, and we really shouldn't. So thanks again to Justin for doing all the email stuff. It really is an amazing job he does.
I couldn't even imagine what that would do to your mental health, like looking at all these, like, sometimes very derogatory comments that come through. And man, it's got to be a lot. Speaking of which, mental health. Evan is on the line. His pronouns are he, him, from Colorado. Would like to talk about a study regarding mental health and religion. That sounds interesting. What have you got for us, Evan?
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. I got a study. A friend of mine challenged me this morning, kind of first thing when I woke up. He sent me this thing from YouTube called Academy of Ideas, which I used to watch. And it's sort of weird. And they said there was a benefit to having religion in terms of like your recovery from depression, reduction in anxiety. And I went through and I found like the National Institute of Health.gov study, and I read some of it, but I just wondered what if you all maybe had some pushback on that, if you really think that like the study is concluding like that religion has a positive impact on mental health. I know you haven't seen the study, but
I've seen the study. I haven't read it yet. It's on my list, but I think it's really interesting. It doesn't prove God, first of all, right? It doesn't even address the question of God. It addresses the effect of what religion has on mental health. And we know Harvard's done a study for the last 80 years on what makes people happy. And the primary conclusion is the more people you know and interact with on a deep level, good friends, the more good friends you have, the happier you will be. That's social connection. Does religion do a good job of promoting a social connection? Yes, it does. So the question I have when I read the paper, that I'll have when I read the paper, is have they addressed any of these other external issues? Because when you say religion or church, you're talking about more than just a belief, right? A God, right? That's atheism versus theism. You're talking about a community that develops very strong us versus, depending on which Christian community you're with, very strong us versus them type connections, very tribal type connections. And so is that what they're showing with this? That folks with those types of deep connections are happier and recover better mentally? Okay, I'll buy that. I'm not going to buy this proves God. I'm not going to buy that God sets something up that is correct, because we're social animals and we build communities very naturally. That's what we do as human beings. We tend to build communities. We tend to get very tribal, us versus them mentalities. It's amazing what happens when your us becomes the entire planet versus just the United States, or any country for that matter. But yeah, it's an interesting study. I don't have anything to say against it or to say that it's BS. I just don't know what it was actually attempting to do, other than the conclusions that religion seems to have, some positive mental benefits. Okay, that doesn't mean it's true, and that's what we're really concerned with. Is it true? Because if all it is community, we atheists aren't good at doing that. And I think part of that is fear. I think part of that is It's very easy to feel like you're isolated. I'm currently in Dothan, Alabama. That's why my RV is parked right now. And it's very easy for me to feel very isolated as being the only atheist. But having done the atheist experience, this show and other shows, the one thing I know is that there are atheists around here. I just got to go find them. And I have to go develop those connections, so that I'm not feeling that. But also building secular connections with religious people is also okay. If you go to meetup.com and you're interested in board gaming and you go to board gaming and that's what you guys talk about, okay. If they want to pray before they start, let them. It doesn't hurt you. But you know, I was in Phoenix, which is fairly secular, but you know, go find some other things and build those deep connections and build that community around you, whether it's atheist or not, secular or not, you know, and just keep it secular. That would be the answer to that, right? So it'd be interesting to I'm looking forward to reading it here when it comes up on my reading list.
Is that helpful for you, Evan?
That actually just sort of reiterates what I had sort of thought as I was reading some of it, because it was a meta analysis of like many studies. So I was trying to look for, you know, holes in the armor here and like, what, this can't be right, you know, but when you put it like that, it definitely could be more of the community aspect. So you definitely.
And I've never been religious as such, and I'm pleased to say that my mental health is rarely suffering. I've got fairly good mental health, and that's because I surround myself by people that I like that have nothing to do with religion. And I'm lucky that I come from a place. I've said it before. I say it again. Come from a place that is largely secular, and so I was fortunate enough to have grown up and surrounded myself with like-minded people. And now that I live in the States, it is harder to do, but it's not impossible. I've got a big group of friends here in North Kentucky that are non-believers, and they are out there. You can easily find them if you look in the right places. Like Jim said, you know, there are places to go and search for them.
Yeah. I made sure that you could do this, but if you Google 80-year Harvard study on happiness, that'll pop up the actual Harvard study as well. And you can go look at it. So folks in chat had said that it's hard to quantify happiness. Well, you've got to quantify it in order to study it. And I think Harvard's done a really good job with that. And I'm trying to think, there's another guy, who is uses happiness of a population, layered.
Like as a benchmark kind of thing.
Layered. Professor Richard Layard, Layard. All of his stuff is fantastic. His books are on my reading list as well. I'll get to them here soon. But his studies on happiness have actually led to government changes in what they're doing in terms of government policy. And I think it is absolutely fascinating. His YouTube stuff is wonderful. It's more stuff on happiness. And he's actually the primary reason, and the Harvard study are the primary reasons why I don't use well-being as my standard for morality. I use happiness because we can measure it. We know what it is. And we can actually get good government if we use that as our standard of what we should be doing at any given time. So go look at some of those resources as well, and you'll see kind of where my argument comes from that I just made for you.
Yeah. Layard. Is that what you said?
Layard. Layard, basically.
Layard.
First name Richard.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you.
Hey, no worries.
Thank you
well,
so
hopefully
much.
that helps you,
Both of you.
and good luck. Good luck, Evan. Hope it all goes okay.
I appreciate it.
Look after yourself.
Yeah. All right.
Okay, you have a good one.
All right.
Thanks, Evan.
Ta-ta.
There you go. Oh, that was a nice one as well.
Yeah.
I feel like we've that was a nice call.
We've
I
had
really
a wide-ranging call. Yeah.
Oh my God, we need to do this more, Jim. Let's do it some more.
Absolutely.
Well, before we do go, just don't forget that there's the prompt for this week is complete the sentence. Reiki never works on me, probably because I fill that out in the comments, and your comment may well be read on next week's episode. And tune in at the beginning of next week's episode to hear the top 3 answers. Thanks again, Jim. I've really enjoyed hanging out with you.
Thank you.
We're going to jump on over to the Discord, so feel free to come on over there if you want to. But for now, That's it for tonight. I've been Jon the Skeptik with Jim Barrows. Remember to keep wanting the truth.
Watch the non-prophets and join the hosts in the live chat. Visit tiny.cc/ytnp.